Professor Winston Moore, Deputy Principal. Dean Professor David Akombo, Dean of the Faculty of Culture, Creative and Performing Arts. Nation Representative, Ms. Danielle Singh, Senior Communications Marketing Officer. Welcome. Dr. Marcia Burrowes, lecturer in the Faculty of Culture, Creative and Performing Arts, and our distinguished speaker tonight, and fellow historian. We go back years at Queen's College when she was my departmental head. Heads of department, we have Dr. Belgrave here, and I believe there are other heads as well. Faculty, students, and there's some students here, some graduate students. We're glad to see you. And I believe culture students. Is that so? That's or what? Music? International students, welcome. Members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the historic 3W's Oval. I am Henderson Carter, Chair of the 60th Anniversary Planning Committee, Head of Department of History and Philosophy and Senior Lecturer. We are changing the batting order today. I'm down to come last, really, as the last man, the 11th man, and Professor Akombo was down to open the batting. But we're changing the order today. I will open the batting. And I want to welcome you to this place, the 3W's Pavilion and Museum, which we are hoping to develop into a real important heritage asset, bringing people here, giving them tours of not only the museum, but giving them tours of the Wall of Fame, the Whispering Wall. Yes, we have a wall here where if you whisper at one end, you hear yourself at the other end. And of course, other assets like the CLR James Cricket Research Center, where we have the manuscript of CLR James, that manuscript that he used to write his book, Beyond the Boundary. And we have other pieces of important works. We also have the George Lamin manuscript, and we have his typewriter. So those are important historical assets that will be on show very soon in this 60th anniversary year. This is our 5th legacy lecture. And we are partnering with the Nation Publishing Company, a wonderful partner. Let's give the Nation a round of applause. The Nation has been sponsoring the Elsa Govell Lecture for over 30-somebody years. But this year in particular, they have come on board with us as another mature institution, 50 years. We're 60, you're 50. You've come on board with us to partner on a number of initiatives. There was the Greening Town Hall meeting. I think that was June 29th, right? Then there was the cricket match, the big cricket match under the lights right here on the 24th of August. And the Nation lost, yes, but I hope that you're going to ask for a rematch. And when that rematch comes, we will fight again on the field. But we love the camaraderie, the relationship, and this is what the university is all about. Building these links with stakeholders. We can't be out there existing on our own. We need to build links. And as we go forward, we hope that we will deepen these links. And of course, we partnered with you with this massive beach cleanup on just a few weeks ago, where we went down to Barclays Park. We had over 70 students at Bath Beach cleaning up garbage and really setting an example for others to follow. And I hope as we go into next week and week after, when we have our big gala dinner on the 14th, under the tent, where we honor 3 of our graduates, we will have that partnership going again. So this is an invitation as well, that you can buy some corporate tickets, $500 a piece for that dinner on the 14th. And this is also an invitation to all of you here to come support the university in this dinner, because this is a project where we are raising funds for the Science and Technology Innovation Fund. We want to keep science at the forefront of this university, and of course, other universities are forging ahead, sometimes leaving us behind because of a lack of equipment. We want to be on par with these North American universities. We also have a reading program every Saturday. We have people reading in the library, a wonderful initiative, a heartwarming initiative to have people, 25 children, come and sit around a table, and we have readers reading to them. And we hope that some of our colleagues in LLL would help us out as well to read with these children. We'll talk with you, Cora, later. But we're happy to be here to hear this lecture from Dr. Burrowes, a specialist in culture. She'll be talking about debating identities, culture, and the university. But before she comes, I want to invite Danielle. Give her a round of applause as she comes.
Good night. Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, this evening's featured speaker, Dr. Marcia Burrowes, and other specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Danielle Singh, and I am the Senior Communications Marketing Officer for the Nation Group of Companies. I am honored to be here tonight to deliver the opening remarks on behalf of the management and staff of the Nation Publishing Company Limited, in celebration of our 50th anniversary and also in celebration of the 60th anniversary of the university. Our theme throughout this year has been celebrating legacy, and these 2 milestones of each entity are legacies to be celebrated. When I saw that the topic for tonight was debating identities, culture, and the university, it took me back to my days at the university studying linguistics and communications. In the Faculty of Humanities and Education, I had the pleasure of meeting some amazing people from across the region. I learned different twangs of language, matured enough to try different foods, and understand the importance of hard work when someone has a lot to lose. I also found a best friend in a Catitian and an advisor in a Vincentian. Culture is people, customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements. The University of the West Indies and the Nation newspaper are vital pillars of the Caribbean culture and diversity. The Nation newspaper, like the university, has grown up with the nation of Barbados. It has thrived in its achievements, celebrated in the arts and sports, gave the Barbadian people a voice, and commented on social issues. It has also identified itself as a pioneer in Caribbean media. Tonight, I look forward to learning on how the university is impacted by its cultural differences and how it identifies itself as a cultural hub. On behalf of the Nation Publishing, I express my sincere gratitude to the University of the West Indies for partnering with us in this celebration of these 2 momentous milestones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielle. And of course, as we go forward in this year, this anniversary year, and we will continue to deepen those relationships. At this time, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the Dean of Culture, creative. Let me read it here. From the Faculty of Culture, Creative, and Performing Arts, right? Professor David Akombo to come and to introduce our featured speaker, Professor Akombo.
The protocol having been established, I would like to say a few words. I'm a slow walker, but I never walk backwards. Those are not my words, those are the words of Abraham Lincoln. 60 years in the making, the UE Cave Hill has been walking forward and never backwards. It gives me a great pleasure today to introduce the speaker for this evening. Dr. Marcia Burrowes is a lecturer in the Department of Cultural Studies in the Faculty of Culture, Creative, and Performing Arts, where she also serves as Deputy Dean. She conceptualized, crafted, and implemented courses for the Cultural Studies program at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels at the Cave Hill, Mona, and St. Augustine campuses of the University of the West Indies. Let's give her applause on that. Dr. Burrowes served as assistant chief. I think that's where, yeah. She served as assistant chief, then chief of Cape Caribbean Studies. As chief, she was responsible for the Caribbean region, Saca, Belize, to Guyana, conducting workshops and overseeing the syllabi and examination of Cape Caribbean Studies course. In her spare time, Dr. Burrowes is an actress, director, and a producer in Barbados theater. She has inducted Caribbean cultural and theater workshops in the Caribbean and the diaspora. In 2013, Dr. Burrowes was awarded the Barbados Service Star, BSS, by the government of Barbados in appreciation for her work in cultural development. Dr. Burrowes is an author and presenter on the radio program Today in Bajan History. Ladies and gentlemen, without so much ado, join me in welcoming Dr. Marcia Burrowes to deliver the lecture.
I want to begin by paying homage to Bruce St. John, reading a poem of his, or some of it, as its culture. Good night. She said, what? We language limit? Who language in limit? Ever language like a big pot of Bajan soup, piece of yam, piece of potato, 2 dumpling, 3 headed, 1 beet, 2 carrot, piece of pigtail, piece of beef, piece of salt, that's a powder, that's a pepper, and don't forget okra for add to the flavor, and what? Boil up, cook up, eat up, and you still want rice? Soup limit? You know wrong with she? Because she father did a ringneck dentist could afford she study in England when the rest of the week couldn't go. She think me and know what we talk about. But she be here 40 years ago after she left England. Got she thinking that donkey year after donkey year that still must be here. Got she good and fresh. She nose up in the air. Like fart don't rise. She neck so damn stiff, although she taking tablet, she brain what lacing up. Here she, the boy stood on the burning deck. Damn fool. The foolishest Bajan child would have jumped off and save himself. Ode to a Grecian urn. You mean Keats can't see nothing in England to write about but a piss pot? And an old one at that. Word whatlessness didn't so bad because he write about daffodil. But we can't arrow lick daffodil going and coming. It was the wind in the trees, they said. Hear the Bajan child. It's the wind in my they said. Shakespeare, Shakespeare. And the pear ain't dropped yet. We language limit. The Yankee does read we short story. All nation does read we poultry. And like them too, they don't understand a single word and them must laugh at the right time. They just cry at the right time. and ask for more and ask for the book to go with it. We late in the writing through people like she, but early catchy wife would late one night and give them 2 kick in the orphanness and the lateness on them. Never try to trick early again, but talk is talk and do is do. Petra macaroni make sonnet. Well, Bajan cuckoo can make sonnet too. Bajan language is a damn funny language. Piece of English, piece of African tongue mixed with Carib and Arawak to save the damage. And the cook-up is a beautiful sound. The canny English turn it into a sandwich, but it's African meat going round with the round. Each English Bajanize a delightful ravage and a lemonade language in the tongue. Every language got a rhythm, but Bajan lick guitar, drum, and banjo stiff with blows. Imagery pretty and sweet like a rose. Limey try to mock up we poor nation, but Bajan say we life. So here we goes. A band of proud Bajans upon we toes. Count the syllable, Mr. Macaroni. Look at the verses. And let me hear your speech about the image in the sound. Tell me, don't make sense. And watch out for the Bajan in the rhyme scheme. Ab, catch a crab. Go, let it go. Sonnet? But that woman. Actually, if we ain't got masculine rhyme and feminine rhyme. Proper Bajan rhyme. No southern nor the Gora or no lesbian rhyme. Bajan language limit. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Tribute to Bruce St. John, who was a member of staff here. The 70s. I extend greetings to the deputy principal. I also thank Dr. Henderson Carter, chair of the 60th Anniversary Committee, for inviting me to take part in this lecture series. It is he who requested that I give special attention to the topic of culture, my favorite matter to wrestle with and debate the issues that arise. I also thank Ms. Anne-Marie White, who rescued me several times with my images, and Dr. Tara Innes, members of the Anniversary Committee who organized the lecture series. I thank them for their patience and support. This lecture was initially scheduled to be held in July, but due to commitments requiring my immediate attention for the UWI Elizabeth Watson Jackie Opal publication project that I will speak of later, I requested that it be rescheduled to September. This lecture gives focus to those moments where the arts and culture have had an especial impact on the Cape Hill campus. It will be selective in view, especially of the time limit. I've got about 45 to 50 minutes to cover 60 years. I am assured there will be an opportunity for publication of these lectures. I hear you, Dr. Belgrave. I know, I'm trying, I have 44 slides. So I hope, I'll cut off hour. The spaces for review as follows, and so you can now watch the fun. Yeah, we will begin with the Faculty of Arts and General Studies, the faculty I attended when I was at university. This faculty was renamed the Faculty of Humanities and Education, the name it holds today. We will look at the Department of History, which also became History and Philosophy. We will peek into the main library. I hope we have time. Now, the LRC, now renamed the Elizabeth Watson Audiovisual Unit. We will note the occasions in which the Cave Hill campus partook in CariFesta, the Caribbean Festival of Arts. In the 2000s, we have the creation of the Cultural Studies program, followed by the Arabara Center for Imagination. We will look at then eventually the FCCPA, which is what we have now. So folks, we ready? We're ready. Okay. This lecture serves to map a few moments in the history of the Cape Hill campus and provide some insight into the ways Cape Hill constructed and reconstructed its view of the term culture. As we say in cultural studies, culture is not fixed, identity is not fixed. There are always, however, attempts to fix the meaning of culture to suit a moment or to suit, for example, constructs of gender or ethnicity. I begin with reference to Dr. Richard Alsop, who published a collection of articles that appeared in the Advocate newspaper. It followed what was called the Opera Affair. Held in early May 1971, the Barbados Arts Council staged a performance of opera by the New York Opera Theatre in the Arts Lecture Theatre, ALT. Students were granted access through a reduced entrance fee. However, following the performance, a series of articles appeared in the Advocate informing readers that the KFL students had behaved badly. Are we wasting money on campus? The opera at Cave Hill, students gave a poor performance of defense. It must be noted that 1971 is the height of the Black Power movement. Questions can be asked why the Barbados Arts Council saw it fit to stage a performance of an opera to bring the New York Opera Theatre to Cave Hill. Because it was Black Power, other campuses, Mona and St. Augustine, had had strikes. Students had risen up in protest because it was the era of the time. Students were wearing Afro hairstyles, were wearing their dashikis. They were challenging colonial norms. And the Barbados Arts Council brought the opera here. Teen Talk wrote, but let us wake up now. Let us know that the KFL campus is not the property of the students, many of whom have never driven anything other stroke than with a pen on rare occasions. And as for the hecklers, the students apparently interrupted the performance and heckled. The hecklers at the New York Opera Theatre, they were in the wrong church and in the wrong pew. Perhaps what was most surprising is that the society were against the students. That surprised Alsop. And so he wrote a series of articles that were put together in a publication in 1972 called The Question of Barbadian Culture. He has moments in there to the university, so let's go. Let me read the first one. When the inaugural ceremony of the new UWA College of the Arts and Sciences took place on the newly acquired land opposite the new harbor of Bridgetown on Saturday, 12th October 1963, nobody noticed a certain amazing link with Christopher Columbus's discovery of the New World. At least if it was observed, no speaker at the ceremony drew public attention to it. But almost to the day of the week, on Friday the 12th of October, Columbus first set foot on a new land. The significance of the parallel can be pressed further. Barbados, like Columbus, had on entirely new land opened up an experience which was going to change both vitally and irrevocably the life of these parts in ways that nobody present at the landing could really foresee. Indeed, if they could have looked into the future, perhaps Barbadians, as also the friendly Arawaks whom Columbus met, might have preferred to send the newcomers packing and continued in their own time-honored ways. Alsop does say that the region came, sent great best wishes, and all went well at the opening. But I want us to observe the last statement. It is most instructive. Might have preferred to send the newcomers packing and continued in their own time-honored ways. There was indeed great opposition to the establishment of the KFL campus in Barbados, as some sectors of society sought to keep their own time-honored ways. I argue that this opposition has continued in one form or another through 60 years and can be seen in the arena of culture. As we will note in this lecture, this opposition has become a running theme, perhaps its own cultural norm, impacting the determination of identities during 60 years of existence. Picking up again from Alsop, the important thing for me is that the KFL campus was mandated to cater for the Eastern Caribbean. I have colleagues who continue to ask, why are we thinking about the Eastern Caribbean? Well, that was a part of our mandate. Yet Alsop noted these questions. What could be the role of a local university? What must our university aim to do? What, in fact, do we want a university within our shores for? Alsop advised against imitating great European models by adopting a narrow and apologetic view of culture, such as the Arnonian Eurocentric view, which was unwavering in its determination that only a few in a large society could possess culture. This late 19th century concept of culture as a glorious universal mapping of the pinnacles of achievement attained by the great for the edification of the small is seriously lacking in substance when put to test in the late 20th century world, but is far too attractive for many, learning or otherwise, to let go of. A culture so conceived, and the bold is mine, a culture so conceived, very academic and select in character, would have been a gift limited to a relative few, while the great bulk of the nation would have to miss it. Alsop goes on to note that not many persons in the region had access to education. Until in Barbados, till 1961, the majority of persons did not have access to education. So if we continue to think of culture as the learned, only for the learned, you are literally leaving out 90-70% of a population when you construct the term culture. Beckles further advanced this view. This is Sir Hilary, or Vice Chancellor. He argued that social changes had been underway throughout the region since the 1930s rebellions, and for Barbados, free education at the secondary and tertiary levels, as advanced by the Barrow government, were implemented. Quote, "For the first time in the island's history, society seemed fluid, and working class families were able to produce individuals who could be found in all social groups. The creation of a campus, Cave Hill of the University of the West Indies in 1963, drove this process, as was anticipated. These social changes have been hailed by some as evidence of a basic egalitarian nature of the post-independent social order. Further, radical elements within the black middle classes appeared to be rejecting some forms of the European cultural heritage, such as the students who went on strike for the opera affair, and began the movement to validate their own Afro-Barbadian traditions." Ladies and gentlemen, now what I am going to attempt to do, I know, see, it's 7:30. I will try my best. We are going to take a journey through 60 years. At some point in time, I'm going to ditch computer 1 and only deal with computer 2. But let's see. So I am beginning the 70s. I thank Professor Cobley, who I see is here, and Dr. Tara Innes. There was a performance in 1969 at the Commonwealth School, which was connected to the Cave Hill campus. I'm not quite clear yet how, but for the publication, and perhaps Professor Cobley can emphasize more, but we did have a performance in 1969. For this 70s, I am looking at what Kamau Brathwaite wrote for us at Cave Hill, and I'm going to give full focus to Robert Lee, who we will all come to know. I hear someone calling his name, so maybe we do know. This is Kamau Brathwaite. He had been mandated to do an entire review of the state of culture and the arts in Barbados, and he came from Mona, and he included in his review the university. What was interesting for me is that Brathwaite picked up what Alsop was talking about. It looks like in 1979 there were still questions of what is the purpose of this university. And he wrote, "The establishment of a university in any community, and especially in a post-colonial society, is a major act of cultural commitment to the notion of creating a base for our own intellectual ideas. Scholars, students, governments, and the complex Beijing UB community, since the university serves as a regional institution, are involved. Under this definition, the university's role as a cultural organization is total, and any attempted assessment of role impossible and indeed impertinent, since, as I have said above, its very existence is a cultural act." So for those first 10, 15 years, the university continued to be plummeted with the question of relevance. Kamau also wrote, he will look to the university, and he wrote, "A comprehensive assessment of the university's role in Beijing Caribbean cultural development is, however, needed." This is 1979, especially since there continues to be a public and intellectual debate as to the consciousness as a distinct from this obscure seminal process of its existence and the rate of contribution. So there were two recommendations that I want to say that Brathwaite makes in 1979. He recommended, well, I see that the head of LLL is here. He recommended in 1979, without sacrificing its regional responsibilities, it is high time that the Department of English initiate a special course in Bajan literature, similar, say, to courses in Bajan history. And as I've said this, because at Cave Hill there would appear at the moment to be a literary imbalance away from Bajan writing. When major Bajan writers such as George Lamin are discussed, there is not enough reference to his native matrix, while the achievement of Frank Collymore, for example, is hardly ever examined. Ladies and gentlemen, I had a brief conversation with the head of LLL, Dr. Cora Belgrave, and in 2023, we do not have a course in Bajan literature. 40-something years later. It is something that we need to tend to, and we can ask ourselves, why? Let's meet Mr. Robert Lee. Mr. Robert Lee attended Cave Hill in 1969. Okay, that's long before a number of you were born. I was a toddler. Mr. Robert Lee is St. Lucian. I discovered he was alive. He's very much alive, and we've been WhatsApping like crazy. So this moment is really oral history because I am sharing what he shared with me about the 70s. Apparently, Cave Hill was the hottest spot for drama in the 1970s. I don't know if anyone knows this. None of us look like we were old enough to have been around. But he has been discovered, thank Miss White, we found 10 books. Someone says to me he has more. So these are 10 of his books of poetry. In some of those books, he has works by Derek Walcott, also by Professor Hazel Simmons MacDonald, Kendall Hippolyte, a number. But so Robert Lee, and today, someone sent me this image. So that's him. He launches a book, and honestly, I can't tell if it's 1973 or 1976, or neither could she. So he launches a book of poetry. So thank you, EMS. They hung on till I got everything in the PowerPoint. All right, so Robert Lee, he is a poet, a playwright. He is, no, I can't even see what I have there, so hopefully you can. So Milton McCollin was a name I heard about. It took years for me to meet him. Richard Marshall, I remember really well, and Richard is still alive. I was surprised to hear that. No, because Richard, well, then again, it's when you're very, very young and everyone seems very, very old. Richard is wonderful. Welcome, Richard. I hope you're well. The Rape of Fair Helen was a play that was launched in London in the 60s. So this group, in their protest against the Eurocentric norm, proceeded to perform only West Indian plays. Quick backdrop, many of the Barbadian theater players said there's no such thing as West Indian plays at that time. So the groups on campus were deliberately going against the norm. He says he remembers doing Belfanto by Eric Roach at Commermere. He also then worked with a group in Speightstown, and he traveled with Daphne Joseph Hackett. As a matter of fact, it seems Daphne Joseph Hackett was on the grounds here at the Arts Lecture Theatre quite a lot. And that's a name that we know that was happening a lot in drama. I was stunned. He says he began writing poetry once he was here at Cave Hill. Many of the poems of that first book were written in Barbados. I remember writing Lusca. He says Lusca is his pet name for St. Lucia. At a kitchen table of the apartment I was renting, either 1973 or 1974, one of my first nature poems. And he dedicated every poem he wrote almost to Walcott. He speaks of sound poets, like Bruce St. John, that I just read earlier, is a sound poet. And he sees Kamau Brathwaite as a sound poet. And he graduates with first-class honors. And then we have these long conversations just to let you see. Yes, I was at KFL from 69 to 74. You can read that. Kamau, now Kamau, though he was based at Mona, apparently was continuously in Barbados. And I believe the multilingual center is now the what? It's out there by CARICOM Park. That was the multiracial studies. So there would be these readings over there, I didn't know, and Kamau and Bruce would read. Yes, Beverly is saying something. I don't mind, please interact. Go ahead. So I'm in the 3 W's. So I would think the CARICOM building, isn't it kind of like, never mind. Interaction, please, I don't mind. He says he traveled and traveled, that the groups would perform and travel in Guyana and travel through the Eastern Caribbean. And he ends up, he sends me a WhatsApp, good years. Cave Hill was good. I'm suggesting that perhaps if we have not done so, and it's possible we haven't, perhaps we can nominate him for an honorary degree. He was here in 1969, still alive and well, having fun. All right, so then the 1980s, I'm here. We were a group from around the region. If you see the name, Joan Cuffey, that is the Joan Cuffey from the Institute of Gender. We formed a group called On Stage. We were the de facto theater group of the university. Well, because there wasn't any de jure theater group of the university. And I remember Veronica Dujon, and there were many more of us. Dr. Michael Giltz, who was lecturer in literature, would work with us. So we would put on 2 one-act plays. The first we designed ourselves. He wouldn't touch us at all. But then he would come with a one-act from somewhere, and it would have then, he would be the second performer. So that's tribute to On Stage. Yeah. Also, Professor Cobley, again, maybe you could speak to it, A Light Rising in the West. We have no programs. We have no physical evidence. Marie White and I looked. So this is a call to anyone who has any programs, any memorabilia to share with us at the university. Professor Cobley says that this was, would you like to speak now? Good. You were in it. Come. It is an interactive lecture. Otherwise, we would go through 60 years and sleep. Would you like the mic? You were an actor, and the great Earl Warner was the director. And that's it.
Well, I mean, I can tell you about it, but I don't want to take off.
Afterwards, okay. So, but really for the 80s, this was it. I think. The year of the great slavery controversy. Again, do any of us remember this? I, again, was young. I remember CBC would show the images that we now know are real. Wilberforce had created these images. And there was an outcry that CBC was making this up, that GIS was making this up, that it didn't happen, that there was no such thing as slavery in Barbados. It was really teetering on the edge of madness. And so you have the promotional. Adonijah wrote a piece called Barbadian Black Gentilhomme Wish to Forget Africa, Slavery, and Emancipation. And Trevor Marshall said slavery cannot be watered down. This is a moment that the university stepped in. The Department of History, I don't think it was History and Philosophy at the time, stepped in and did a series of lectures in the steel shed. They were extremely popular. Persons mark their calendar every other Tuesday. They're in the steel shed. I wrote that, yeah, one good thing, apparently it's Elombe Motley had designed a full 4-year celebration, which was then rejected. But then the Department of History said, no, they would have these series of lectures. Now we are very accustomed to lectures. I spoke with Professor Marshall. He says there was a lecture series before emancipation, but this one is the one that really grabbed the public. What happened with slavery? What happened with emancipation? So publications came out, Emancipation 1 and Emancipation 2. Notice that the graphics are the same. That at one time it was thought it was an image from 1838, but we now think it's 1888. I don't know if that has been updated. But the image of the enslaved free dancing became the image of the publication. So there are publication Emancipation 1, Emancipation 2, Emancipation 3, Emancipation 4. So 4 volumes of the lecture series. The history department continued to do lectures, but this really is the moment that they were at their height. Slavery was a way of life. That's why I'm including them in culture in the university. It became the culture, the everyday experience to go listen to these lectures every week. The department was actively involved in what Gleason calls the historical consciousness, or rising the historical consciousness of the Black Barbadian people. And Professor Marshall wrote, the lectures were designed to focus popular attention on the legacies of slavery, on the nature of the post-slavery experience in Barbados. And yes, the steel shed would be packed. And there was a gentleman named Hitler, who I don't know what was his real name, but he would have a question every week. Hitler would stand and very good questions, so we'd always say, there's Hitler, let's go, what's he gonna ask? An amazing experience, really amazing experience. So that's the 80s. The 90s. These hang in the humanities faculty, on the wall of the humanities faculty. The Humanities Festival, I'm not clear when it began. For the publication, I would have found that out. But to my shock, I realized that these 2 images are related. Because I always see the Lambing one, and I always see the Alsop one. It happened on the same night. It seems that Lambing spoke on behalf of Alsop. So these images are Alsop receiving the award. Very, very tall. Who is that again? Glenn Griffith. And Lambing speaks. Quick sidebar. I was chair of the festival committee, I believe, in the 2000s, and we realized we had not honored Lambing. And we called him to say, we are honoring you. And he said to me, you're silly. I've already received it, he said. And I said, no, Dr. Lambing, okay, hold on. And I went back. Terrence Innes was on the team. We looked, we couldn't see it, so we honored him. And he came, and he publicly said, young lady with plaits there don't know that I've already received this. I think he was remembering this instance. He hadn't received the award. So we awarded him, and then Hillary sent me this hand pencil note. Marcia, you were right. We had forgotten to receive Lambing. Also, we at the university, George Lambing lived just there in Bathsheba, and we had not invited him to the campus in 21 years. And he sent me his CV to prove the point. So something happened, so that's Lambing. But in the 90s, for me, it's the dictionary. Has anyone seen this, used this? Yes, the lexicographer at the back. My intention was to walk with the dictionary and have a game, but time might not have allowed it for anyone just to call a letter. Yes, this was a major accomplishment of many, many years of work. Again, as a student, I remember coming out of the library, and there'd be these little yellow cards, and you would say, anyone knows the meaning of? And then it'd be some word that I have no idea what the word is, but some student from some other country would recognize the word. And he collected over a period of time meanings of various Creole, what we now call Creole terms. So he wrote this in the introduction: as homemade, the Caribbean linguistic product has always been shamefaced, inhibited both by the dour authority of colonial administrators and their written examinations on the one hand, and by persistence of the stigmatized Creole languages of the laboring population on the other. Just another quote. Scattered around 1 million square miles of sea, this aggregate population of 5.8 million speakers that include 12 independent nations in their number, each with a linguistic entitlement to a national standard language. And I place this in red for us to think, because this was over 20 years ago. Would we have questions still? Is there a right or wrong way to speak? Would we still debate that now in 2023? On what ground can any local or folk thing name be rejected as wrong? On what other name is right, and why? Are we still battling? So for example, listening to the Bruce St. John poem, he assumes that you agree with his use of the language and that you'll figure out what he intends. And that is what poets do. But when we were in the tight stronghold of the colonial narrative, standard English was the expected norm. And then we've reached the 2000s. Hey, I'm getting there. I want to look at the center one because I honestly can't remember what happened. I've asked Alison to find the leaflet. We celebrated Alverno del Congo here. I think there was a week of full drumming and dancing, etc. You remember that, Beverly? Yeah, I just can't remember. There was so much happening in 2004. But we did, within the faculty, celebrate Alverno del Congo, who was outstanding drummer. Praise Song for Bruce is a magnificent achievement, and 3 Nights of Freedom is incredible. So Praise Song for Bruce, myself and Elaine Fido. Elaine Fido was at Brown University, I believe, in the United States, New York. She came down, but we organized a symposium to Bruce St. John. And then we also thought of a performance. Professor Alan Cobley, whose name is going to keep being called all night, he was the dean, and he was in full support of it. I remember Michael Tate standing on the top of the Faculty of Humanities and doing some incredible acrobatic moves, and I am panicking, oh my God, don't let him fall. Now I hear that. We didn't think of insurance, but never mind. It was the other thing I remember, Professor Kamau Brathwaite agreed to come and speak. Took a bit of negotiation, but we got him here. And then they whispered to me just before he began, Marcia, don't forget, we have this full performance. Ask Professor Brathwaite to keep it to a minimal. And I go and I whisper, Professor Brathwaite, we do have this full performance and have been asked. And he said to the audience, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Burrowes has just asked me to keep it short. He spoke for 2 hours. Non-stop. Did not blink. We were there. Okay. Unfortunately, as has happened many times, we never got the recording. It was a fabulous moment. It was held in the Quadrangle, which was one of the earlier spaces of use at the university. And I remember Kamau just kept going and going. That was amazing. What was even more amazing is that the National Cultural Foundation chose the performance, Praise Song for Bruce, as the representation for the national representation for Carifesta in Suriname. And I was able to perform with the troupe then. Before it was just as producer, but this was quite a moment, Praise Song for Bruce. The second one is that, 3 Nights of Freedom. Again, Professor Cobley. We were honoring the bicentennial of the abolition of the slave trade. And we brought in especially the Haitian dancers, and that's Jean-René Delsuen, who is very much alive, but unfortunately, I think that there was a year after or 2 years after, there was a hurricane, and some of the Haitian dancers, an earthquake, some dancers died. To my knowledge, she's still alive. What Professor Cobley thought, we had a conference, and we normally have plenary speakers who speak to themselves and 2 people at the conference. So we turned it upside down. The conference was held during the day, and the plenary speakers were held at night. So 3 Nights of Freedom, the 23rd of May, the 24th of May. So this is the flyer, as it is there. So on the 23rd of May, it was devoted to look at the Anglophone Caribbean. The speaker was Professor Bridget Brereton. And the dance, whatever dance and performance was done, it was with the Anglophone Caribbean in mind. That was well attended the first night. The second night, the 24th of May, the speaker was Professor Jorge Duani. So he was from the University of Puerto Rico, and freedom of movement, the Spanish-speaking people in the Caribbean. That was well attended, but news was getting out that the Haitians were the final night. I think we brought the fire codes. Person sat on the steps of the EBCCI, all up against the wall. Everyone wanted to see the Haitians perform, and they were not in any way disappointed. The speaker then was from Guadeloupe, Jean-Claude Lambion. the Guadalupan dilemma, but the Haitians danced. The Haitians danced. And as I say that, I do believe one or two of those dancers were killed in an earthquake later on. So quite a moment, 3 nights of freedom. Again, the idea of Professor Alan Cobley, the combination of the academic with the arts. Quite a moment held at EBCCI. Wonderful stuff. So that was 2007. Then this is Professor Hazel Simmons McDonald, who is noticeably absent tonight. She is my co-founder of Cultural Studies, the Cultural Studies program. It's all written here, so forget that. I'll just use one computer from now on. Yes, so I did my PhD in Cultural Studies at Warwick. I went back to Warwick on a Leverhulme scholarship and was contacted by Cave Hill. Would I like to come and implement the Cultural Studies program here at Cave Hill? At the time, I was head of department, History and General Studies, and yes, Dr. Carter was in my department, so was the Dean of the Cathedral. It's a very strange department. Dean Dixon, quite a few of us, Dr. Brown, etc. And I did design and craft. I thought, what would be the courses? I was allowed free reign. I would have conversation with Professor Cobley, and he would send me back upstairs to think about it again. And I would think about it again, and eventually theory course was involved, debates and identity were involved, dynamics, and the methodology. And I submitted the courses in May, June. Then Professor Hazel Simmons McDonald came back from leave, because I think you were there for her stead. And we worked very long nights, Professor McDonald Simmons, night and day, getting cultural studies together. And Cave Hill, Mona and St. Augustine came and reviewed the courses and okayed them. But I want to show you this. Cultural studies didn't begin with the teaching. Cultural studies began with lectures. The great and good of the Caribbean came here to lecture. So we did have Rex Nelford, and we had eventually Minshall. So if we look at the year 2004, I've put the months in bold, because in January we had George Lamming, again, sidebar, George Lamming, because the monies arranged by Professor Hazel Simmons McDonald came from the Rockefeller Foundation and the Ford Foundation. So if the individuals spoke here, they also spoke at St. Augustine, they also spoke at Mona, they also spoke at Antigua. George Lamming prepared a separate lecture for each venue. So to Trinidad, he again talked about Indo-Caribbean and African Caribbean experiences. In Mona, his lecture was to Claude McKay, the great literature person. In Antigua, it was to Tim Hector, who was a famous journalist who I believe was killed, unfortunately. And then he came to Cave Hill, and we were anxious to see what he would write about. He would speak about, his title for us was The Castle and the Cave. It was Plato's cave that you have to try to escape and then go back to help them escape again. The corridors of the faculty were really cold the next day. Remember, they hadn't invited him to Cave Hill for 21 years, so he came already. But then in the March, we had Rex Nettleford, and in the March, we also had Earl Lovelace, and in the April, Lennox Honeychurch, and that's just in 2004. So what was happening is that we were building an audience. They would, oh, when is the next lecture? And everyone would show up, and the audience grew and grew. Cultural studies then was made sensitive to the communities of the region before the teaching actually began. If you note again, we continued the lecture series. Olive Sr. came, Naylor Hopkinson came, Peter Minshall came, and that was another night we broke the fire codes, because everyone sat on the steps to hear Minshall, and I remember him saying, okay, if anyone has anywhere to go, leave now. And the audience stayed. And for 2.5 hours we stayed, and they came out and said it was like church. The Minshall experience was amazing. We had a Lombe Motley pass through, Cover Down Your Bucket, which is about stick licking, and we had Mervyn Allen. I think what we would do is humanities would take the advantage of having the scholar, and it would be twinned with a cultural studies moment. So lots and lots of discussion on what is culture, how is the Caribbean continuing, etc. Let's look at cultural studies. I'm just putting that. The students designed this flyer. Graduate studies kept saying, change it. Students said, no, we're cultural studies. We want to have an impact on our identity. Michael Piggott, who was at BIDC, I remember he said he tore paper up, threw it on the ground and took pictures, and that became the skin. The students chose the color. They wanted warm colors. And then they decided on the images. So the top image is of Grenada Carnival. I took that picture. Someone took a picture of a child house, but they knew the person, so we know our IP. What you have there, 3 Nights of Freedom, dances that occurred are there. Then there's Olive Senior there, Spiritual Baptist. That image of the food was offered by Dr. Susan Harewood, who at the time was on staff in cultural studies. Daniel dos Santos, who came from Brazil, she offered the picture of Brazil in the corner. That's Peter Minshall, and there's Dr. Pedro Welch. We were able to get away with that for a few years, and then graduate studies shut it down and said, nope. And now the program for cultural studies is 1 year orange, no dynamic colors in the background, etc. So for that moment, the students had their say. This also is in my office. Again, the same Michael Piggott, I think they performed reggae, and it was the impact of capitalism on culture, so that's where all the blood comes in, and the money. And they call themselves Right Angle, but with a W-R-I-T-E. So it was a fun time. The students themselves were innovative in the process, were very a part of the process, pushing the process of cultural studies as we all grew together. I see Dr. Hunt at the back, so he would remember these moments. I am jumping ahead then to 2010 to 2020, reminding us all that Cave Hill was continuously involved in the arts in the Caribbean. So the dates at the bottom remind you, 1979, Michael Jilts did direct the play Mother Poem, which was taken to Cuba. 1981, the Arts Lecture Center, the Arts Lecture Theater was used as a performance space. And I was speaking to Paul today, who remembers the various dancers, the various performances that happened. And apparently the quadrangle was used, so persons would sit upstairs, like by my office or by the former principal's office. 2003, of course, is Praise Sound for Bruce. And then in 2017, Mr. Millington, who is sitting there to my right, and we were in charge of the symposium. This poster is done by Alison Johnson. Cheers to Alison. And we had quite a dynamic experience in the EBCCI. I kind of emerged from it and heard of chaos that happened in Carifesta generally, but we kind of got through well. We are working on the publication of the volume of papers from this experience. So that is the Carifesta Symposium. In looking around for posters for EBCCI, there are so many because the EBCCI has become the space of performance, the space of dance and film, of theater, of drama. Everything happens at EBCCI. This really stuck out to me because this, you know, this is a reference here to Straight Outta Compton, but it's straight out of EBCCI. It's a summer workshop, dance, animation, film. Everything's involved, and it's from 2016. We then, cultural studies, I worked with Mr. Millington and Dr. Elizabeth Watson, one of her last public appearances before she passed. She gave a lecture on her work on Jackie Opal. I remember the EBCI was absolutely filled, and the shock of learning that Jackie was known and central to the movement of ska in Jamaica. We did not know. And Professor Allen and I have just written a piece about that. It was not known what he had achieved in Jamaica. We thought sometimes we only crushed Jackie into a small thing, used to die for coins. Jackie is major, as Aja says, he was at the cornerstone of both ska and spooge here in Barbados. She gave that lecture in 2018. Of course, there are a series of lectures to George Lamin. I just found this flyer for this one with my friend Lyndon Lewis. Spoke on behalf of George, who was very much alive at the time. Then there was a celebration of poets in 2019. I'm checking the time, I'm not bad. 21 poets. Then the FCCPA was created, a combination of the cultural studies program. Cultural studies was then made as a department. We were joined together with creative arts department, and it became the Faculty of Culture, Creative, and Performing Arts. Yes, Dr. White. I believe Professor Barreto has that division for a purpose. So the FCCPA, it was COVID. We were all online. So this particular moment of 2021 is when we celebrated the life and work of Jackie Opal. We had over 100 persons online. I remember that we had a feed of Facebook and we had a feed of Zoom, and we turned off one and 60 people didn't leave. And it was 3 hours, and I said, anything else? Because everyone was tired. But again, it was an online moment, and we'll speak about the work we're doing with Jackie Opal then again. Also, because it was online, we have this virtual information sessions, and I believe that young lady has become like the mascot of cultural studies and her strip, and FCCPA and her strips. Folks, gosh, I've actually gone through it. So, here we are, and this is open discussion time. What are my final thoughts? Culture and the university. I am bothered. I have learned in recent times, and someone is here who told me that cultural studies students, whilst getting their BAs, we have over 10 PhD students and over 40-something MA students. It seems that they were made to run a gauntlet. That individuals from the faculty came to the students and kind of tried to discourage them. And they came with that construct that Kamau Brathwaite says is an ancient and crooked lie. Barbados has no culture. I myself has experienced this. I was teaching an undergraduate class, and the young lady, it was online, and she said she told her friend in an Eastern Caribbean country how much fun she was having in cultural studies, and the friend said, hey, but Barbados have no culture. What are you doing cultural studies there for? I have a undergraduate student this year, and she says, yes, at home we say Barbados have no culture. It makes no sense, but yet it keeps haunting Barbadians of African descent. I am curious to know why, and I might never find the answer. It seems to be a myth that gains life among certain sectors of a community. Sectors of that community then enjoy the bashing of students or the bashing of Black Barbadians. They themselves turn and, in a sense of self-hate, say Barbados. So Barbadians also say Barbados has no culture. So that gauntlet surprises me. I am more worried because I'm told it was said in the EBCCA, and now that we've just created the Faculty of Culture, Creative and Performing Arts, apparently, Dean, it has made its way into our space again. I don't know what to do about it. I'm pondering about it. I think Alsop answered nicely in 72. He gives a definition of culture. A people's customs, their kind of artistic creation, their kind of social grouping, their kind of religion, their kind of sexual behavior, their manner of dress. Everything is culture. Your whole way of life is culture. Their preferred foods, their kind and use of language, especially in their proverbs, dare until night catch it. Their kind of folklore and their literature, their kind of music, their emotional and physical response to it, sources of amusement. In short, the whole complex code which they learn and share. That's culture. Every human being on the entire planet has culture. Barbadians are human. Somehow we have to, maybe we at the university have to find ways of intervening in this myth that some individuals and communities continue to revive. Bart talks about death with reprieve. Just when you think you've killed the thing, it's up, showing again. That's how myths are. And I'm now going to speak about what we're doing with the director principal is here. For example, the university has, in conjunction with the Division of Culture, is investing into this publication of the same work we spoke of, Dr. Elizabeth Watson, on Jackie Opal. I think Jackie Opal is a moment in cultural history that has been silenced, repressed, that we are about to bring back and let us have open discussion. Jackie was born in very humble circumstances, and in the 1960s, the norm that to which Alsop spoke of would not have appreciated that. He would have been judged by where he came from. He was a musical, he was a virtuoso, he was incredible. 60 years later or 50 years later, we can now appreciate Jackie Opal, and what does that say about Barbadian culture? Hopefully that publication will be coming soon. The university has put its weight behind it, as they did in response to the slavery controversy that there was no slavery in Barbados. The university is again getting in there to give some weight to the moment. And I'm inviting everyone, whether in culture studies or in the FCCPA, to work with us, confronting the myth. It's a lie, it's an insult, it's reprehensible. If anyone says it to you, say that to them. Nope. Why are you saying that? I'm curious why it's still hanging around. I am just going to go back a bit. Oh no, hang on. There we go. So we've talked about the gauntlet, Alsop's culture. Yes, Brathwaite's directive to the Department of Literature, I think, should also be to us. We in the Faculty of Culture should ensure that our courses reflect exploration into Barbadian culture. A lot of it, as Kamau would say, is underground, so we have some research to do. We can't just pick it up like that. Maybe that's the process, that we have courses that allow for oral traditions, allow for our memories to be included, and we recreate Barbadian culture appropriately. I've just spoken about the Watson Opal project, so let's go to the end. I'm just ending with a hope. When we were working on Carifesta 2017, we heard about this plan to have a camel garden in the EBCCI. And we thought, yes, and we would have performances there, etc. It has not happened yet. So I'm ending on a moment of hope. Deputy Principal, it seems that the plan has been around for some time. A space, maybe in the gully, maybe in the area, the head of creative arts is here, that honors Kamau, a moment of reflection, a moment that students, scholars can come and sit. So I'm hoping that we can have the Kamau Garden. Thank you very much. I'm open to comments. Thank you.
First, let me say thanks very much for a very erudite presentation this evening. I was informed greatly by your presentation and your action and activities and all that brought us to laughter. You started your presentation with a bit from Bruce St. John.
Yes.
And my mind goes way back, because I'm from the era way back. I'm in my 70s now, moving on, right?
Whoa.
Yeah.
You look good, sir.
Yeah? So I can reflect on persons like Calendar. I think it was
Timothy Calendar, yes.
Calendar,
St. Elizabeth Village.
And yeah, he was one of the great guys from way back.
Yes.
But I want to know if, and a lot of people here may not be aware of Jeanette Lane Clark and
yes.
Marvin Mann and those type of people.
Yes.
You're a lecturer in cultural studies.
Yes.
Do you think the storytelling that they would have done and written many years ago still have any significance in the modern day Barbados? Those times from Jeanette Lane Clark and the type of writing that she did with Marvel Manning and Alfred Pragnell and those people.
Yes.
Has that got any relevance today, is what I want to know.
I think we need to revive it. Ironically, I was watching the BBC and they've had a series called The Brathwaites of something, and I thought, very interesting. Yes, I think it can. I think it's something that we can do. It seemed to be a moment in time, if you remember, in the 70s, 80s. Paul Keys Douglas from Trinidad was constantly on the radio and traveling. Bruce St. John was everywhere performing. I was very lucky to have Timothy Callender as my supervisor. I didn't know who he was at the time. It was just he was my supervisor. Afterwards, I think, that was amazing. Sometimes movements grow out of something. So the 70s, 80s seemed to be a moment when all of that happened. Then it's kind of died down now. We were talking about the drama, the local drama where Cave Hill was so central. What's happening to our drama, our theater now? We need to revive it. We have several writers and performers in this faculty, and we can encourage it.
Yeah.
Yeah?
And you made reference just now in your latter stages to Jackie Opel.
Yes.
I don't think we really pay attention to these icons. You know, Jackie Opel is really big in Barbados, big worldwide, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
But we look at him through this minuscule
We have.
thing, you know. And it is a pity. I made mention of it I think it was last year, when you were at the lecture at the Frank Cullum Hall. And, you know, COSCAP, the royalties from COSCAP ended after Jackie Opel, 50 years, the 50-year legacy.
Yes, they stopped in, I believe, in 2021. 2020.
And his family now do not get royalties.
You bet.
Because, you know, 50 years after the artist has died, because the COSCAP is a signatory to this Lomé Convention. So Jackie Opel's family does not get now any royalties because the 50-year thing has gone. And the government of Barbados is supposed to bring in legislation to extend that 50-year period.
It
and
seems
Jamaica and those people, Jamaica have done it to 95 years.
Yes.
And other countries have gone up to 70 years, but we are still at the 50-year range.
You're right.
Yeah.
I spoke at the birthday, the annual celebration, the Remembrance Day of Jackie Opel, and I included that because my co-author for this book, Professor Aline, studies it. I'm not sure how many of you know that Jackie Opel records sell for $1,000 US, 500 US, 600 US on eBay. Not a cent goes to the family, the gentleman is right, because the copyright expired in 2020. Japan loves Jackie. So does the Netherlands. So if you go on eBay, you'll be surprised at the price of a 45. And a 45, for those who may or may not know, that's just one song, possibly two. It's side A and side B, that's it. And that's a lot of money. The minister rushed up to me afterwards and said, Dr. Burrowes, the cabinet is debating it. So Jamaica, for example, their year is to 70, so it tries to cover the lifespan of the person and possibly beyond. 50 years, it's highly possible. Jackie was very young when he began to record, so it's possible 50 years can expire. He could have been alive. The matter of Jackie being worldwide is interesting because through Professor Allen, we've seen advertisements for the sale of Jackie's music in Birmingham, Manchester. In 1965, he seemed to have an audience in the UK. Whether it's a diaspora audience, we're not sure, but the records were being sold. Unfortunately, a lot of the finding records about the records is a difficulty. So we don't know, but it seems that the music, remember, he was the voice of ska, and ska did have that international reach. There are rumors that Jackie signed contracts with who we don't know. And one of the questions we have now is who owns his music? Because again, we don't know. There's a lot of work to be done. I think once we have the publication out, there's so much more we as a university can help and do. Thank you very much for that, sir. Any other comments? Yes? Professor Cobley?
Just, first of all, a couple of comments, but then I have a question, which I will get to. First of all, Lighter Rising in the West, 1988. That was the 40th anniversary of the university's foundation. The script was written by Karen Ford Warner, and it was directed by Earl Warner. And it was an all-singing, all-dancing, all-acting production with about 20 or 25 skits in a row. But Earl wanted the dancers to sing. He wanted the actors to dance. he wanted the singers to dance and to act. So we couldn't get the damn thing mounted. We worked on it. We were in the Frank Colombo Hall for 3 days, from 8 in the morning till after midnight. We never ran through a full dress rehearsal because we never got that far. In the end, we put it on without ever running it completely. It ran for 3.75 hours. So it was an amazing experience, let's put it that way. But apart from me, I was Lord Moyne from the Moyne Commission. I was in my 20s at the time, but they talked my hair so I was grey, and they gave me a suit they had got from somebody who'd been buried, I think. And I was dressed as a very old man, and I pronounced that the university should be founded and so forth. But Andrew Pilgrim was in it. Susie Archer was one of the dancers, I remember, who's in Faculty of Medical Sciences now. Michael Gill and all the university choir were in it. It was a cast. Richard Alsop was in it. It was a cast of hundreds from the campus, students and staff. The second thing, the praise song for Bruce, you mentioned that. When we were setting that up, I went to the campus registrar, Andrew Lewis at the time, to tell him that we wanted to put Michael Tate on the roof of the Arts Lecture Theatre. And Andrew Lewis said to me, "You can't ask me that." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because we'll never get the insurance for it. So if you ask me, I'll have to tell you can't do it." So I said, "Okay, well, I won't ask you." And we went ahead and did it. That was Andrew. That was Andrew. And then the 3 Nights of Freedom thing. I just wanted to, I see Dr.
Hunt.
Dr. Hunt. I'm calling him Dr. Hunt, doesn't sound quite right, but I apologize to him for that. But anyway, John, he coordinated the dance and so on for that event. We brought a group of Haitian dancers and a master drummer. And I believe it was the master drummer who was killed in the earthquake. He was in his classroom teaching when the earthquake of 2011 struck. So when we, I can't remember, do you remember his name? We did a book of the papers from the conference, which we called Trajectories of Freedom, and that book is dedicated to him.
Oh, okay. Yes, true.
In memory of his contribution.
Yes.
So those are the memories part. Now to the question. When we first were planning the Creative Arts Center, I was dean at the time.
Okay.
Actually, we were planning to put it up above the law faculty in the car park up above there at that time. That was the original idea.
Okay.
But when we were thinking about it, we were trying to conceptualize it. What we thought it would become would be a kind of engine of culture here in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. Now, what's been interesting about your presentation is you focus a lot on the academic aspects of culture, not surprisingly from your background. But my own feeling, and the dean is here, so he can tell me whether I'm being fair. My own feeling is that the Creative Arts Center at the EBCCI has not been able to make the connection with the community in Barbados or the Eastern Caribbean that we hoped that it would when we originally were planning it.
Whoa.
So what I want to know is whether you think the center has a responsibility and has the capacity to reach out into the community, both here and the Eastern Caribbean, and be much more participatory in the development, the production of culture. And I say that, you think about Barbados, there were theater groups years ago, Stage 1 productions, WWB productions, and so and so. There was a lot of different theater groups active at one time. Virtually the only thing left now is the annual review, Laugh It Off. So what has happened to theatre in Barbados? Where is the engine? And doesn't the centre have a responsibility to try and participate and help drive that? The storytelling somebody mentioned
The gentleman behind
is an
you.
example of something that the centre could be taking a lead with within our wider community.
Is this on? Oh, it is. Mr. Militant is here. He's the head of the Department of Creative Arts. I think so. I think we can think about it, how to do it. Mr. Militant, have y'all ever thought of that? Bringing the community in, helping to develop community theater. He's going to get up. So I've called him. That's a good question. Mr. Millington would know the history of EBCCI. I have now come to FCCPA. I can see the stuff we can do. Mr. Millington, before I guess my way through this answer.
It's if you slip, you slide. I mean, and I don't know if I should blame you for the question or Professor, because it is a constant question. It's as constant as, do we have a culture? Which at its very basis, really, does not have any real substance attached to it. I mean, as you pointed out, culture is so much. How is it that a human has no culture? I mean, but to the point, which is the other question, and the slippery slope is when you start to talk about the Creative Arts Center, you harken back to the conversations I have heard went on about what it was supposed to be, who was supposed to, be the persons running it, so on and so forth. I think that it has managed, the EBCCI has managed to be something of an agent of culture. Now that's not to suggest that it was what it was supposed to have been, but there's a very strong relationship that it has to the Barbadian community, or parts of the Barbadian community. The problem, I think, and I've been, talking about this for a while, when you start talking about culture industries, creative industries, the questions then begin to change, all right? And I don't think that that space really creates an industry. It creates spaces of possibility. And I think that's what we continue to do, recognizing, of course, that if you start thinking of industry, you start thinking of moving from that era that you were speaking about, stage one and so on, and sustaining a certain movement and a certain energy towards creating, quote unquote, culture. But then with the industry, there's the impact of technology, and that you'd have to study as well as an impact. So it's a very sort of complex problem. Even now, we're talking about a strategic plan which features revenue revolution. What does that mean for the FCCPA? Does culture now move from its working towards community and think about the economics of it? Does it mean that we now have to be the model for making money from culture?
Okay. I think one of the interesting things in the discussions I've had with Robert Lee is he's surprised that the KFL is not this central space that he experienced when he was here in the 70s. Somehow, in the 70s, we were the space. There was Queen's Park Theatre, I suppose Green Room, but we were the space. Everyone came here to do drama, to do theatre. That has gone away. I don't understand, perhaps, when the shift happened. So the connection that Alan is talking about didn't manifest over there. So even when I was here as a student, there was some bit, but not like what he tells me about, that there's drama every night and everyone is going off and performing in countries and they're raising money to do the performances. So your point, Andrew, that now we are hit with cultural industries and generating revenue, that was not apparently a concern in the 70s. It was get the theater done, have loads of fun. It's shifted. But it really then leads to the question that the professor has asked. What is our relevance to the community, to growing the arts, to having the experience of the arts? And can we get the community back here in this as a central space that we once had 50 years ago? How we tackle that, Dean, that's for us to uncover. But the history is there that perhaps we can find ways of doing it, I think. Any other questions, comments? I really shut my computer down, so I invite you to read the publication with me. When it comes out, it will be 10,000 words. I just chose little bits. Did I forget anything? I'll tell you what I forgot. Paul gave this to me when I was in EMS. I just handed over the PowerPoint, and he said, you didn't talk about the African Festival of Festival of African and Caribbean Film. I forgot this. And this brochure is the third one, so I do not remember what was the length of the festival. I remember that we did have some showing of films here, and then I think we moved to Olympus. It was a short livelihood, but we have a full program here. I forgot that. The LRC I should have spoken to. I remember meeting Miss White yesterday and finding an album. Because we're working on this Jackie Opa project, I've learned that Dr. Elizabeth Watson A was at KFIL from 1968. She was assistant librarian, then librarian of what was called the Learner Resource Center. We at KFIL have the largest, or at that time, the largest collection of Anglophone Caribbean music in the entire region. We have it here. It's possible that perhaps Jamaica has overtaken us because it's Jamaica, but as far as the Eastern Caribbean is concerned, that is quite an achievement that we have in the now Elizabeth Watson Audiovisual Center. Is there anything else I forgot? Because this came to me recently. I will do some more digging and see. I hope we can weave it together, the centrality of culture. Yes, sir, Mr. Green.
Just one quick comment, Dr. Burrowes.
Yes, please.
I think that when people say Barbados has no culture,
yes,
they're not saying that Bajans don't eat food, or Bajans don't dance, or Bajans don't speak in a particular way. How I interpret that, or what I interpret them to mean, is that Barbadian culture, Barbados has no culture that is significantly resistant to the imperative and the push of neo-colonial culture, which is a different statement. And the death of theater and the death of many other art forms, or the demise of many other art forms in Barbados, bears testimony to this phenomenon of us creating indigenous culture and then losing it, Jackie Opel's spooge, to the influx of culture from the global north. I think that's what people mean when they say Barbados has no culture. So we continually invent culture only to have it overcome by external forces. So in response to Dr. Cobley, Professor Cobley, I agree. I think the role of EBCCI and the cultural institutes in Barbados is to help create that culture that is resistant to those forces. And that's something I don't think we have done very well up to this point.
Thank you. That's food for thought. Rereading for the 100th time now Kamau's Beijing report and plan, one of his comments is that the culture from Barbados is weak. And he actually says to the university, you have to work on helping this culture to build. And perhaps that's where you're coming from. So he spent, as you know, hundreds of volumes of writing the poetry. So he was trying to contribute to it, that it's a struggle and that we have to work on it. I think, so thank you. I'm just absolutely disturbed that a 17th century narrative can be made to find life in the 21st century. It's a long time to hang around and wake up. As Bart was saying, death with reprieve. So, but I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering, I am wondering. So thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay, everybody was about to clap. We need to go home. I've been sleeping. I hope I haven't bored you. I try to make it short as possible. Thank you very much.
Well, thank Dr. Burrowes for a very engaging lecture, and I look forward to the article, because all these lectures will be produced into a book, and I look forward to the article or the paper from these lectures. But she really did a very good job in showing us. Yes, give her a round of applause. Give her a round of applause. Yes, yes, yes. You want to say something? Yes, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. The other thing I remembered, Helen Carnegie. When Paul gave me that cover, he said Helen Carnegie designed the cover. And the Faculty of Humanities and Education has annually honored Helen. I believe we have prizes for excellence. So just to remember Helen, who I actually don't quite remember when I was here. I think she must have been here in the 80s, 90s. There was a horrible end involving a fire. But that's another name that I should have spoken to, Helen Carnegie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burrowes, for your research. You spent a lot of time doing this research, and of course, great output. We look forward to the paper and of course to the book when it comes sometime next year. I also want to thank our nation representative, Danielle Singh, for her presentation this afternoon. Let's give her a round of applause. Always good to have the nation with us. We'll thank Caribbean Cuisine. They prepared some drink and wine and I believe cake as well for us. So please make sure that as we go, we get something to drink, something to eat. So we want to thank them for this, presenting these refreshments for us. Well, thank the UWI KPhil Cooperative Credit Union Limited for sponsoring these lectures. We thank the Office of Marketing and Communications for their work. Of course, these lectures are videotaped. So in a short while, you will see the videotape version. And we have, this is the 5th lecture now, and we have videotapes going back to Professor Cobley's first lecture. We thank Campus Security Services for their efforts as well. We thank the team that put all of this thing together, Dr. Innes, Anne-Marie White, Tyker Ford, who else? Yeah, that's the team that, run these lectures, organize them, and we are very happy for your participation. And that's it from me. Thank you so much for coming. Give yourselves a round of applause.